Let's go back to Trust. Buckeye first. The U.S. Supreme Court, 2006. This is clear. This is actually a class action suit in state court. It got before the U.S. Supreme Court because of writ of error from the Florida Supreme Court. The contract was said to be void because of what ground? Why was the contract said to be illegal?
Because it's a criminal nature. It need money, but with a very high interest.
Yes.
And it's unlawful under criminal.
Yes, so under Florida state law, you cannot charge what they call usurious amounts of interest. Is that also true under trans contract law?
It's not necessarily violate the criminal statute, but it maybe lead the contract valid in civil law sense.
Right, so it would give rise to civil liability. Like, can you, for instance, what's the maximum you can charge them in interest?
Legally for 24.
24.
Okay, 24, that seems really very high. If you tolerate it that much. In this case, what they were doing was, did you understand exactly the problem that the claimants were raising? What was the check cashing company doing to them? Do you understand what was going on? Huh? So, if you are a person of very limited means, but you expect to take payment every 15 days, 2 weeks. Some people, if they need the money before the 15 days arrive, they go to some company that actually gives them, if your 2-week check is, let's say, $1,500 already, and you expect to get that on May 30th, and your rent is due on, let's say, May 21st. You go to this guy who has money, the company, and tell him that on May 30th, I'm going to get paid $1,500 rent. But my rent is due today. If you give me $1,200 on May 30th, I'll give you my check. See? And then he gives you $1,200. You pay your rent. When May 30th comes, you don't have money. The guy has actually made $300 within 8 weeks. this is not necessarily illegal, but sometimes they say, you're in trouble, aren't you? I'm going to give you 700. Come May 30th, I'll take the whole thing for 200. If these companies do the same thing for a lot of poor people, that starts being a social problem, right? That's why the law puts a limit as to how much you can actually charge for. And if these companies continue to do it, that's a transgression of the rules. What do? The companies. They actually have these individuals sign. Exactly. Why? As I said last time, by having them sign an arbitration agreement, they foreclose the possibility of a class action. A class action would actually penalize, if this is a jury trial, the jury would be constituted of people from the community, some of whom may have the same kind of problem. They would actually punish the company. Punitive damages. So to avoid those kinds of damages in a jury trial, they have these individuals sign arbitration agreements. This is one such example. So the arbitration agreement basically takes you out of the court system, subjects you to private activity. Now the state of Florida understood what was going on, and all the way to the Supreme Court, they actually validated the arbitration agreement because, why was it invalid? Why did they say the arbitration agreement was invalid?
They have to prevent the crime. They have to prevent the crime.
So they didn't necessarily say crime. When they say illegal, it could be civil illegality, right? But they said the contract was illegal because of the users' fees that they were charging. It violated Florida state law. So the contract as a whole was illegal. And the Supreme Court said, Supreme Court meaning the Florida Supreme Court said, if the whole contract is illegal, there can't be any legal part of it or salvageable part of it. Meaning denying the existence of this notion of separability, whereby the arbitration contract could still be valid, although the underlying contract is allegedly illegal because it transgressed some state law that prohibits you from charging users' fees. A lot high amounts of interest. So, not recognizing the principle of separability is saying that if the whole thing is, remember the Galcanis case, if the whole thing is illegal, the underlying contract is illegal, there can't be any legal part of that contract, including the arbitration. That was the initial decision by the Florida Supreme Court. Obviously, the United States Supreme Court wanted to review that case. And how does the Supreme Court, I'm sure you've taken constitutional law, what is the writ that you use to have the Supreme Court review a case? Yeah, the cert, right? And ordinarily, that is the appeals court, right? The circuit courts of appeals, and then it goes through the writ of cert, it would go to the Supreme Court. But you could also have that review of the state Supreme Courts by the United States Supreme Court on a writ of error. There's a federal question like that. This case arose out of Florida state law. So what was the federal basis of this case before the Supreme Court? what law provided jurisdiction to the annexes of the court? Well, aside from the constitutional question. But what was the basis of, what was the federal law involved in this case?
FAA.
FAA, exactly. The Federal Arbitration Act. The Federal Arbitration Act has something to say about the validity of the arbitration agreement. The Florida Supreme Court considered the validity of the arbitration agreement under what law? Under Florida contract law. All they care about is because this is fundamentally flawed, because this is fundamentally illegal under Florida law, you cannot do that kind of contract. Therefore, the arbitration contract itself is also illegal. We're not going to enforce it. If it's not going to be enforced, the court retains jurisdiction to adjudicate this controversy. And they did. They found the company liable. And then the company, of course, appealed, and they said the court lacked jurisdiction because there was a valid arbitration agreement. So, how did Justice Scalia in this case take it outside state law, subject it to Federal Arbitration Act, and come to the conclusion that the arbitration agreement is valid? What is the steps that he took? What are the steps that he took in arriving at that conclusion? What are the grounds of invalidity under the FAA for the arbitration agreement? What does the FAA say about invalidity of the arbitration agreement? What does it say? He applies those principles. Does it contain substantive rules, or does it refer us to elsewhere?
Under FAA, there is two ways to challenge the arbitration agreement. First is only challenge the arbitration agreement itself, and the second is challenge the whole contract.
Yes, so that was the ultimate analysis. But the question that I first asked is, under the FAA, what is the rule that we have for the validity of the arbitration agreement?
According to the section 2, article 2.
Yes.
Upon such ground, they see such law or inequity for revocation of any contract. That is the rule that apply in this claim.
Yes. So such grounds as exist in law or inequity for the revocation of contract, right? That's what it says. So it doesn't itself provide any substantive rules, but it actually just simply says such grounds as exist in law or inequity. Right? Ordinarily, what it means is such grounds as exist under state law, because there is no federal contract law. Right? So ordinarily, that would mean under Florida law, if this contract is considered invalid, then it is invalid. Under federal law also, under the FAA. So he recognized that. You cannot get away from that. So those grounds for federal law, for FAA, and for Florida law are identical, because federal law refers to Florida. Such grounds exist under In this case, Florida contract. So that's why he actually engages in this very interesting analysis to salvage, to rescue the arbitration agreement. Right? This is the analysis that he does. No, this is not. It stops here. Oh no, there's 3 possibilities. Possibility number 1, possibility number 2, possibility number 3. This is questionable. So when you say that the arbitration, the whole thing is invalid, in other words, attacking the entirety of the contract, it's invalid. The whole thing is invalid because it's illegal. That is number 1. Number 3 is, you don't talk about this. We'll talk about this one later, you say. But say the arbitration agreement is illegal. Therefore, it's invalid. Well, the third possibility, obviously, is the underlying contract is invalid. I don't care about the arbitration. So under Justice Scalia's analysis, the court would have jurisdiction to litigate, and the arbitral tribunal would have the jurisdiction to arbitrate. Under which one of the 3 scenarios? Scenario number 1, scenario number 2, or scenario number 3? Huh? Under which scenario does the arbitral tribunal maintain its jurisdiction?
1 and 2.
1 and 2.
Yes.
Exactly. Under 1, the whole thing is challenged. This is not specifically challenged. The tribunal will maintain jurisdiction. In other words, this is presumed to be valid. Under 2, obviously, because it's only the underlying contract that is challenged. Under number 3, if the arbitration contract is specifically challenged for illegality, then the court must decide whether not the arbitration. Which one of these scenarios is represented in this case? Buckeye. It is. Buckeye is number 1. According to Justice Scalia, we have been told that the whole thing is illegal. Nobody has said that the arbitration contract specifically is illegal. Because if you think about it, there is no illegality pertaining to the arbitration agreement. Charging too much interest is irrelevant as far as the validity of the arbitration contract is concerned, because the arbitration contract, all it says is in case there is controversy, in case there is dispute, we will arbitrate. How is it affected by the illegality of the interest rate? See? That's what this is clearly saying in this case. You're not telling us the illegality about the underlying contract of charging too much interest rate affects the validity of the arbitration agreement. The arbitration agreement is independent, is severable, presumed to be valid. You're not telling me that the illegality of this interest rate affected this independent contract to arbitrate. That's what he's saying. Now, there's one more subtle point that the Florida Supreme Court has done. It's advanced. They said, we understand if we're talking about a voidable contract, right? But if the contract is void ab initio, you know void ab initio, right? From the very beginning, there can't be any part of it that could be valid. The whole contract here is void ab initio. It never existed in the first place. It's illegal. You cannot conclude this whole thing under Florida law. So how come that there is a part of it that is not void? It's void ab initio. So the distinction between voidable and void ab initio, right? The Supreme Court of Florida agreed, okay, Justice Scalia, your analysis with respect to this vis-a-vis voidable contracts makes sense. But if it is completely void from the very beginning, it never existed, how could there be a valid part of this whole? That is the question that they asked. He addresses that question. What does he say?
Contract should be interpreted broadly, and in this case, the contract could be the transaction between two parties. Not exactly must be the contract itself.
Yes. He actually resorts into this very literal reading of the term contract as contained in the FAA. Right? In the FAA, what it says is, as grounds exist in law or in the grounds of invalidity of contract as it exists in law or equity. Right? That's the statement in the FAA. That's the provision that we just read out. Right? The term contract is used in the FAA. It does not say voidable. It does not say void. All it says is contract. The validity and the invalidity of contract. So contract, that's what it says. So to him, the meaning of contract in the FAA in that section includes both voidable and void contracts. For him, basically, all contracts are voidable. Right? Yes. Because even if they are void, somebody has to say they are. And we are talking about who? You cannot erase it. So I think what Justice Scalia is thinking is by saying the term contract must be interpreted broadly to include both voidable and void ab initio contracts. For him, I think all contracts are, at the end of the day, voidable. Even void contracts are voidable. Because within the meaning of that term, contract, ultimately someone has to say whether they are void or voidable. Therefore, there is something to talk about. That is how he addresses this little wrinkle about whether it should only be limited to voidable contracts or include void contracts. Now, Justice Scalia is a very pro-arbitration justice. And he always finds a way to rescue the validity of the arbitration and maximize the number of cases that will arbitration and minimize the number of class action suits against the companies. He always finds a very seeming justification for that. And this is one of those cases, 2006. And quite unsurprisingly, the next case, Fiona Trust, was decided in 2007, decided by, I have not seen them both together, but I would think they know each other very well. This is Lord Hoffman from the UK House of Lords. He's still alive, a very prominent arbitrator. So just Lord Hoffman is the one who actually wrote the Fiona Trust case. I'm sure you've noticed similarity between Buckeye and the Fiona Trust case. And I'll be surprised if Lord Hoffman had not read the Buckeye case before writing his opinion. Because the analysis obviously is very, very similar. Now, in Fiona Trust, what was the alleged ground of invalidity of the contract? And which contract did it affect? Bribery. What is bribery? To do what?
Give official money.
For what purpose?
illegal.
It would be in many jurisdictions, right? So there is actually a definition of bribery in the UN Convention on Corruption. Corrupt activities are broader than just bribery, right? It could be other kinds of corrupt activities. And bribery requires, the Supreme Court in the United States has actually analyzed it, it requires quid pro quo. I give you money, you do this thing for me, and that something has to be illegal, or something that you had care of. That's the quid and there's the pro quo. So who was allegedly, who did engage in bribery in this case, in the Fiona Cross case?
Senior appraisal of solid control by Mr. Newton.
This also involves shipment of goods, right? And somehow somebody got bribed for this transaction. And they were bribed for what purpose? Signing a contract. And one of the parties obviously said, I am not bound by this contract. I'm not bound because it was produced through bribery. And I never authorized this individual to sign it. He did not sign, so I'm not bound by it. And obviously this contract contained an arbitration agreement. He did not want to be bound by the arbitration agreement and of course challenged the validity of the arbitration agreement on grounds of bribery, illegality. So when I said that the outcome in this case is similar to the case in the Bakai case. How so? What does Lord Hoffman say in this case? Does he dispute that there might have been bribery, or does he even care about that?
He do not have.
What does he say?
Even though because of bribery, the underlying contract is illegal or invalid, but the arbitration clause, its validity should be determined by the arbitrators. I mean, because according to the party's intent, a reasonable businessman will decide to go to the arbitrator and decide whether this underlying contract is valid or not.
Yes, so it's which one of these three scenarios is Fiona Trust?
Also, scenario one, I think.
So it would be scenario number one, right? They said because it was procured through bribery, the whole thing is illegal. That's what they're saying. Well, Lord Hoffman says, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Because
even though the underlying contract is invalid, it doesn't mean the arbitration clause is also invalid unless you challenge the arbitration clause.
Unless you challenge, exactly, unless you challenge the arbitration clause specifically, the arbitration contract remains valid. But now he knows, or in fact he says it, that the alleged grounds of invalidity cannot possibly affect the arbitration agreement. Why? What is it that he's saying? He in fact expressly says that it's not possible that whatever you're saying affects the arbitration agreement. What is he saying when he says that? How does he know that by challenging the whole thing, they're not challenging specifically the arbitration agreement? They didn't say they weren't challenging the arbitration agreement. They said the arbitration contract is also invalid because it was procured illegally. He doesn't think that they were specifically challenging the arbitration agreement. They haven't told him. In fact, they said that they were challenging the whole thing, including the arbitration agreement. But he didn't believe them. Why? So you bribe someone to do what for you? Maybe he understands. What is it that he has trouble understanding? Bribery versus what? You bribe people to do? Huh? So what he doesn't understand is, why would you bribe someone
Signing arbitration.
to sign an arbitration agreement? Now I understand if you actually bribe people to negotiate a price or whatever to get the business to engage in that kind of stuff. But once you've signed the contract, okay, let's say you bribe, but who actually takes bribe to enter into an arbitration agreement? So what he's saying is, this guy might have been bribed, I don't know. Some arbitrators need to decide whether he was bribed or not. But I cannot imagine that he was bribed to sign an arbitration agreement. Because the arbitration agreement is separate, it's all about procedural aspects of it. It's all about how to resolve the dispute. You're not telling me that he actually got bribed to sign an arbitration agreement. Therefore, the arbitration agreement, as far as I know, is not affected by any kind of illegality. If you say that it is affected, you need to tell that to the tribunal, not to the court. Therefore, just like the Mackay case in Fiona Trust, what we're told is that unless the arbitration agreement is specifically challenged on grounds of invalidity, in many cases under the New York Convention, all those three things, under the New York Convention, the arbitration agreement should be enforced. And the enforcement of the arbitration agreement means the actual decision goes to the arbitration tribunal. Now, it does not mean that the parties do not litigate the arbitrator's jurisdiction before the arbitrator. They can raise the same question again. The kinds of questions that they raise to the court, they can actually repeat the same kind of question and have the tribunal decide. All the courts are doing right now is enforcing the arbitration agreement. We'll see how how closely they look at the arbitration agreement before they enforce it. There are different standards we're going to be talking about in this class. But it's enough to know for now that all they're doing is enforcing the arbitration agreement. What it means is sending it to the arbitral tribunal. It does not foreclose the possibility of a jurisdictional objection before the tribunal. You can appeal before the tribunal and tell them that although the court has enforced the arbitral decision agreement, although the court said that you have the jurisdiction to decide on your own jurisdiction, which means the validity of the arbitration agreement, we make the argument that you lack the jurisdiction and the arbitration agreement is invalid. And then you would present evidence before the tribunal and see whether they actually agree with you or not. So that is, the court's decision is not conclusive, and as much as it is possible for you to make the same argument in front of the tribunal once the agreement has been enforced. So all it means is that you take your case before the tribunal, including the same jurisdictional question. One last point on Fiona Trust. Yes, Lord Bolton says that some grounds of invalidity, ipso facto, could affect both. Yes, by doing this, you're also doing this. And he gives examples. What is one of the examples that he provides? In regard to that, this is not one. If the alleged ground of invalidity is such and such, it would almost always mean that you're challenging both the arbitral agreement and the underlying. What are those examples? Forgery. Yes, exactly. If, for instance, you were saying that you never signed it and nobody signed it, it's forged, the whole thing. That means you are challenging both the arbitral agreement and the arbitration. In those cases, you don't have to show that you specifically targeted this because the whole thing is invalid. Make sense? I think it does. Okay. In the remaining 5 minutes or so, let's briefly review what we've done today. So we started with presumptive separability. Separability meaning it's autonomous, meaning it's subject to its own laws and it's independent, has almost nothing to do with each other, subject to its own autonomy. And it's separate quid pro quo, meaning that it's a separate, completely different negotiated contract. The 4 cases, only the first one denied the existence of separability. To them, this whole notion of separability makes absolutely no sense. The contract is fundamentally flawed, is illegal, or is invalid. There can't be a part of it that is legal or valid. And that's where they talk about if the arbitral tribunal decides that the charter party does not exist, unless they are insane, they must also decide that they don't have jurisdiction. That's what they say. But since then, and in fact even prior to that, they have this notion of separability. The Swiss conception of it back in 1933 is the distinction between substance and procedure. Arbitration agreement 201 is completely separate, subject to its own law. And then in Germany, they would ask, did they intend to make it separate and be separate rooms, separate walls, things like that. Instead of would they have entered into an arbitration agreement separate. So that's what we highlighted. And this one, obviously, they were talking about grounds of invalidity of the substance, the underlying contract in terms of formality not being signed, things like that. So the idea from there is the grounds of invalidity of an arbitration agreement are limited to those that are enumerated in the New York Convention, and of course elaborated by judicial interpretation and jurisdiction, but in any case those tend to be very limited: mistake, fraud, uninfluence, waiver. Other than that, such formality as you haven't signed it by 2 witnesses, 3 witnesses, those kinds of things do not really relate to an arbitration agreement. They may relate to the underlying contract, but emphasizing the idea that the rule of decision that of validity of arbitration agreement comes from the New York Convention, and they tend to be limited. And Buckeye and Fiona Trust more or less say the same thing. If you are challenging the arbitration agreement on grounds of invalidity of whatever it is, you have to specifically target the arbitration agreement. It's not enough that you say the whole thing is invalid. If you say the whole thing is invalid, the arbitration contract survives that challenge, and the arbitration tribunal would have the jurisdiction to decide whether or not it has the jurisdiction, in other words, whether or not the arbitration contract itself is valid. So that is basically a jurisdictional question. So that's what we've done today. In next class, obviously, I think we're going to be talking about competence, allocation of competence. The same kinds of cases, you will come back to them, but there are some very interesting cases that you need to read. And at the very end of the last class, I've been asked what kind of exam that you should expect. Although it's too early to talk about the exam, but to help you study, what I can tell you is it's going to be an open book exam. That means you can bring your textbook, your notes, and everything else that you want. But I can tell you that all you need for the exam is your class lectures, because I never ask questions that I haven't discussed in class. So those of you who attend and pay attention, you will have no difficulty answering the questions. So everything that you see here is what's going to be asked. I will not ask you anything outside of what we've discussed in the class. In terms of its format, I usually ask a set of essay questions. They tend to be shorter, and I have about 20 or so true or false questions. And the true or false questions are almost always completely based on the New York Convention. So we'll study the tentative provision of that New York Convention, the New York Convention, and then we'll see. Pay close attention to that. We will be answering those questions. So open book, 3 hours in class, combination of essays and true or false questions. Lastly, because we'll be reading so many cases in this class, what I do at the end of this program is give you a list of cases that you should study more closely than others to make things simpler. That does not mean that you have to wait until the end of the semester to study. But you will know which ones actually while we're discussing this. But at the end of that, to make things simpler for you out loud. Okay? So, all right.
就你不仅要说这个 whole country legal， 还要写到4个的时候，这个 A 是要对，那么这是第二种，第三种，不用管那个 online contract。
如果你公交来看这个确定了不管，如果是有效的动态协议的话，是没有办法的。 由他们来决定公正的效力，看起来
所以只能用第三种，就是这两个案例的法官的观点是这样的，是吧？就等于